Hey team, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan Butler, and today we're going to talk about magical electional opportunities that we're going to have for our Sagittarius New Moon. And I'm joined by Ty, a cat who desperately wants lunch. Desperately wants lunch. Somebody give this cat lunch before she tears me up. But today we're going to talk about magical electional opportunities we're going to have from our Sagittarius full moon until our Capricorn full moon, kind of covering the entire calendar month of November. And for those of you who have been wondering a little bit about where I've been lately, I've actually been talking or doing more of my what would be full moon videos more on the Patreon, kind of keeping it self-contained there a little bit. That's probably for a couple of reasons, but the big one really is that uploading it and kind of keeping it on Patreon allows me to talk about some things that I can't talk about really very well here on YouTube. Like the last video that I did there was relationship horary significators as pop song duets. Of course, sampling and talking about the songs that I was referencing, and with how YouTube does its like media and like music licensing, there's no way I'd be able to get away with that here. So some stuff is there. I recommend you go over there and check it out if that sounds interesting to you, or you want to see kind of what else has been up to over there. But we'll work it out. We'll work out in post. But today we're going to talk about and explore some of these elections that we have coming up. There's not a whole lot of them going on. Dusty! We're just all full of cats today. Here's Dusty. Yeah. That was his contribution to the channel. We don't have a whole lot of electional opportunities to talk about this month. Just about 3 or 4, depending on where we are. But we do have some things worth discussing. Some of the biggest hindrances to us in this go around are the fact that Mercury is retrograde at the beginning part of it and kind of turns direct towards the end. Jupiter is retrograde throughout the entire thing, and then Mars will turn retrograde very soon in early Leo. So those are some planets that we're going to have to work around, and it's kind of an unfortunate situation too, because there were a few fixed star elections that I ended up having to pass on because they were of the nature of like Mars and Jupiter specifically. So like Regulus, Sirius, I had to pass on, even though there were some times where it looked like it could line up very well, because I didn't want the moon applying to that planet retrograde. And that's actually kind of a more philosophical conversation to have with myself, to think about as I move forward, whether or not that's something that I like or am okay with in fixed star elections. My gut tells me no, but there's a conversation worth having and exploring there that I was not prepared to do. I was not prepared to present on at this time. So go ahead and getting started with our elections. Our first election opportunity is going to be for the 23rd Lunar Mansion. And the 23rd Lunar Mansion is a really great one. It's one that's grown on me a lot. Kind of over time. At the very beginning of my magical practice, I was a little bit more cautious of it. It was one that I associated, I had a lot more like negative and kind of concerning feelings, ideas about it. Also, my allergies are horrendous, so if I sound weird or if my eyes are puffy, it's because I don't know what's happened, but it's all over. It's not good. But the 23rd Lunar Mansion is one that my attitude on has changed a lot as I've kind of gotten more familiar with it and got more creative in the application of it, or like how to use it, where we use it for. And this mansion is mostly associated with like sacrifice, with eating, with swallowing. And so we see it a little bit more aligned with more malefic type magic just because of that. It's able to consume, it's able to get rid of, it's able to diminish. And we can weaponize that against like other outside forces, or we can use it as a tool for ourselves to kind of feed it or to sacrifice to it areas in our lives or habits in our lives, things like that we don't want to do. This is a more waxing talisman. The moon will be waxing while she is in this mansion. So for here, we think a little bit more about the 23rd Lunar Mansion and its healing capabilities. In the text, the Picatrix tells us that the 23rd Lunar Mansion is useful for healing as well, or has healing applications. And that's a little bit difficult to see with some of the imagery and other things associated with it, but the idea is that it kind of feeds off the illness. You feed it the illness, you feed it the pain, and it takes it away. But we can use this one in a waxing moon period to increase the body, to increase vitality, to diminish symptoms, of course, things like that. Kind of helping the body stand up on its own, helping the body support itself and be strong against whatever sort of illness or weakness we're facing. So this is an election we can have in Western Europe, North Africa, and North America. Australia will have something kind of similar to this, but also different. and in my opinion, the better alternative. So don't worry, Australia, if you feel like you're getting the short end of the stick again. You're not, in my opinion. But for the North American version, this takes place on December 4th at just at 10 a.m. My chart here is set for 10:01. And we've got the moon in the first house, on the ascendant at the very end of the 24th mansion. I'm sorry, the 23rd mansion, and applying this conjunction to Venus here in Capricorn, also in the first house. And I just think that's very good. I was really excited to see the moon line up with the conjunction of the benefic planet in a mansion where it's associated with health, healing, and vitality. We love those connections. We love it when they're there, when they're very like physically there. And so far as like the conjunction, of course, has to be present. The planet in there. And so I always think that's really great. The thing that we're kind of watching out for here is the Mars opposition, really. That's kind of the only thing. The ascendant degree and the moon are far enough away to not have to worry about it yet, but the moon is technically applying to the opposition of Mars. It's in like 13 degrees, which is far enough to where I don't think we have to worry about it kind of in the moment this chart is set for. But that would be something that we'd be more mindful of later. That's just why the moon's not on the midheaven in this chart, for instance, and stuff like that. But otherwise, you have these connections with the moon applying to a benefic planet in the first house, both unafflicted. The ruler of the first house here is Saturn in Pisces, and Saturn is unafflicted by Mars, not close enough to the sun to be combust. So just everything here kind of looks out for what we need, what we would want, and is a really nice setup for the 23rd Lunar Mansion talisman for North America. For Western Europe, North Africa, this is going to take place on December 4th at around 11:15 in the morning. And it's basically the same setup. The only thing that's different is, of course, the moon is a little bit further back into Capricorn, so 20 degrees instead of the 23 degrees. So moon on the ascendant in the 23rd mansion, applying still that conjunction with Venus. Saturn, as the ruler of the first house, is unafflicted by Mars, not conjoined the sun. And you still have the Mars opposition that's pointing down to like 6 degrees of Aquarius. So 10 degrees away from Venus, 16 degrees away from the moon, so even further out in this one to where you don't have to worry about it. And it just lines up pretty well. I was really excited to find it, really excited to have it. So I definitely recommend making it if it's something that you think you can utilize. Because lately we haven't really had a whole lot of the more healing-oriented lunar mansions. Like the 10th lunar mansion is one of my favorite ones, and it's from like the end of Cancer to the beginning of Leo, and Saturn's going to retrograde all throughout it and make it kind of impossible to utilize while Mars is here for like that entire period. So that's going to be really frustrating. It's like 25 Cancer to 8 Leo, which is exactly where Mars is going to retrograde. Something's going to be out. The third lunar mansion is going to experience some turmoil for a while, because with the moon here in like 25 Aries to 8 Taurus, it's going to be squared that Mars. So the talismans that we more go to, the lunar mansions that we more go to specifically for healing, we're going to have a rough time trying to find some good opportunities. Hopefully we'll have some fixed stars open up to make it a little bit more bearable for us. But for now, it's going to be kind of rough waters. We do have the 23rd lunar mansion as sort of our port in the storm, we'll say. So the next selection that we're going to talk about is going to be an Australian exclusive, and it's going to be for the 24th Lunar Mansion. And the 24th Lunar Mansion is a really awesome one. Definitely one of my favorite ones. One of the most prolific and the most giving lunar mansions that we have. The 24th Lunar Mansion is about like multiplicity, about increase, about fertility and conception. Hi. Yeah. Tell them about the 24th Lunar Mansion, Ty. Tell them. Tell them about it. Tell them. Tell the audience. Tell the people about the 24th Lunar Mansion. Okay, camera shy. Hate to see it. But the 24th Lunar Mansion is one that's about multiplicity, about fertility, about conception, about increase. So there are uses here for people who are trying to have a baby, trying to expand their families, trying to conceive, and even for those who have already successfully conceived to carry that successfully to term and have an easy childbirth. Those are all things that the 24th Lunar Mansion is associated with. We also see it generally associated with like increase in wealth, increase in gain. And so it can be useful for those who are trying to increase their financial standing, or get a raise at work, or find a better paying job, or increase avenues of revenue for themselves, things like that. So definitely recommend looking into the 24th Lunar Mansion if you're lucky enough to have an opportunity to make one. Australia right now, hopefully everybody else soon. And our big this 24th lunar mansion is really nice, and the election for it is going to look very familiar to you because it is literally the Australian version of the 23rd lunar mansion. And the only thing that's changed is that because of the timing for it all, how it all lines up for Australia, the moon has actually crossed over from the end of the 23rd lunar mansion, like she was in the North American and Western European charts, to the beginning of the 24th lunar mansion as she is here. So it's going to look very similar. Moon in the ascendant in now the 24th lunar mansion, applying this more very tight conjunction to Venus in 27 degrees Capricorn. Venus, of course, a benefic planet who wants to provide, who wants to give things. Venus and the moon, of course, have really strong specific signification for like conception and fertility. So in that way, this specific 24th lunar mansion can be very useful for anybody who's looking to kind of lean into that fertility and conception or protection during childbirth angle for the 24th mansion. But Venus, of course, does represent wealth as well. There are positive financial indications or powers of Venus that you can still lean into if you're not interested in the baby part of the 24th lunar mansion. You can still utilize it. You can still utilize this one even with Venus's presence for more financial matters. So definitely consider it if you're at all interested in thinking about it. We do still have that kind of same disclaimer. We've got the Mars opposition moving into view here, we'll say. We're still 10 degrees out from the moon, which I think is a little bit too far. If this is starting to get a little bit too close, you're not comfortable with it, I'd recommend following your gut. But I think 10 degrees wide orb is fine enough, is perfectly fine, especially since the connection with the benefic planet is like literally 1 degree away. But yeah, knock yourself out. Enjoy your 24th lunar mansion. Our next electional opportunity is going to be for the 12th lunar mansion. This is going to be something that's going to be available for Western Europe and Australia. Technically also for North America, but we're going to put a pin in that. So the 12th lunar mansion we've moved on to our waning half of the moon phase. So in our waning moon, we look to diminish, we look to get rid of, we look to let go. We look to curse if that's something that we're interested in. We look to reduce. And so when we're moving into this phase of the moon, we're looking for those lunar mansions who can perform those same skills very, very easily. For whom the waning moon phase is their MO. So for this, we look to things like the 12th lunar mansion, and the 12th is one of my favorite ones for this sort of practice. It is a talisman that's very much about letting go of things, about fighting our own demons, learning what it is that opposes us, learning what it is in ways that we're holding ourselves back, learning how we have built up or let things build up to become seemingly monstrous and impossible to work with or fight against. How we have let little things become so out of control and so in control of us that we think we cannot do anything else about them. That's where the 12th lunar mansion comes in and helps us sort of realize that it's all in our head, or that it's not impossible, and that we can work through it. So I always recommend the 12th lunar mansion for people who are struggling with breaking a bad habit, with getting started making new good habits, starting to work on themselves, and kind of grappling with the difficulties that can bring. So for the Western European version of this chart, it's going to be on December 19th at 2109 is what this chart is set for. You're going to want something kind of in that area. And here we're going to have the moon in the 12th mansion on the ascendant here. And she's going to be applying a trine to the sun. The sun is going to rule the first house. Is far enough away from the square Saturn to no longer be worried about it, 15 degrees out, and is not in the crosshairs of retrograde Mars. So the sun is doing very well as ruler of the first house, which is great. And we have a nice, strong connection with the moon here. And so I really like the sun. I'm wearing a lion shirt right now, but I really like the sun, as you can't tell. And the powers that the sun has or can bring to situations like this where it helps us. The sun is about clarity, about seeing, about understanding, about knowing, and kind of having that awareness to look into and see the reality of a situation and how maybe we let it get out of hand, how we've maybe let it become a monster that is a threat to us rather than something that we can work with. And so I really enjoyed that part of the sun and how it can work very well with the 12th Lunar Mansion, and kind of give us that preparedness, that awareness to move forward to move forward with letting go of something, to make room for something better to be. Because that's a big, the things that we carry with us, the things that we as people carry with us throughout our lives that just, I don't know, just weigh us down. But the sun and the 12th Lunar Mansion combination together helps us see what that is, helps us understand what that is, and to be able to make those steps to move past it. So I definitely recommend this mansion to anybody who's going through or thinks that they might be going through a situation where it can be very helpful. Also, the 12th Lunar Mansion is very helpful when it comes to like New Year's resolutions, because a lot of our New Year's resolutions, in my opinion, and I know they can be kind of hokey. I don't think it's so much of a thing anymore. But any sort of kind of milestone, which naturally lends itself to reflection, like the calendrical new year or birthdays or, something like that, anything like that, that kind of gives us a moment of pause to reflect on the year that we passed, to think about like what we don't need to bring with us into the year coming ahead. And we don't need a lot to come with us. We don't need to bring with us any more negativity, any more obstacles, because I feel like that's just going to be the name of the game for the rest of the decade. But alas. So the Australian version of this chart is going to be very similar. It's going to take place on December 19th at 23:30, so just about half hour before midnight. And here we're going to have the moon in the first house. It's going to look that same way, trying that sun here in the fifth house in Sagittarius. The sun is far enough away from Saturn. No issue with Mars here. Same with the moon. And all that stuff that I just said about the 12th Lunar Mansion being very helpful for those things. Australia also will get to line up with it and talk about it. But the next election opportunity, kind of sliding into that one, is going to be for a Regulus fixed star talisman. That's for North America only. So let me show you that chart, and then we can talk about why that chart qualifies as, in my opinion, a Regulus talisman. And why the very, very similar Australian and Western Europe and North African charts did not, just for controversy for the channel. But Regulus is a fixed star in the constellation of Leo, and it's one that my attitude about, or kind of my thoughts on, have had to change a little bit recently due to events, not necessarily related to the talismanic purposes of it, where we see Regulus focused more on like branding, on recognition, on honors, on winning, but also in relation to health in the body and the mind, where we see Regulus recommended for helping deal with anger, also for combating the melancholic humor, which is like a whole complex disease series relating to like mental illnesses like depression and malaise, anxiety, and like even bodily issues ranging from like mobility disorders to constipation to autoimmune diseases and immunodeficiencies. So kind of got a lot covering. There's a lot going on. If you're sick with it and it's lasted for more than 3 weeks, it's probably due to melancholy. It's a good rule of thumb to utilize. If it's a chronic disease, it just might be melancholy. So a lot of really good health benefits, a lot of really good ways to use Regulus there. But let's go ahead and take a look at the chart for it. And so for North America, that chart is going to take place, and this might not be something that people west of me are able to get. So if you're in the mountain and the Pacific time zones, this might be kind of difficult to get. It's going to take place on December 19th at 22:08, and it's going to look familiar to you because it looks very similar to the setup that we just used for those 12 Lunar Mansion talismans. But here now we've got the moon at 28 degrees of Leo, Regulus is at 0 degrees of Virgo, which is on the ascendant, and the moon is still applying that really tight trine with the sun. Typically for Regulus talismans, you want Jupiter or Mars because those are the planets that the star is said to share its nature of or with. But Regulus has such strong solar qualities, some of which I mentioned before, that the sun also does a really great job of kind of conveying and communicating or partnering with that Regulus fixed star energy to bring it down into really great talismans. So definitely recommend it. And well, it's kind of fun now because, the other thing is, this chart also might look kind of familiar to you because we kind of talked about it last time. I'm pretty sure last month we had a very similar situation, except it was the moon in a square with the sun in Scorpio. I think that was right. I'll need to double check it, but I won't double check it before this gets published because I'm not that kind of guy. But I would need to double check it, but that feels right. And now we have the trine to it, which is much better. So if you're one of those people who at the time were available to and made that Regulus talisman with the moon, which I think was in that square to the sun, and you're available to do it again now with the moon in a trine to the sun, I would definitely recommend it. Yeah, just go for it. Do your best. Actually, I think I was dumb. Not for this. This is good. Like, we'll do this, but I think I might have been dumb. Okay, so let's take a little bit look at... So let's take a look at what could have been the Regulus. Let's see if we can make a Regulus chart work, because now my brain is broken. So we'll see if we can make a Regulus chart work for Western Europe and North Africa. The first issue I know that I can tell with the moon on the ascendant applying to the star is that the star is at 0 degrees Virgo, so that's the degree of the zodiac we have to get on the ascendant. And if I do that, the moon is like 6 degrees away from the ascendant, which is cadent to me, and that's not going to work. So then our next option is to get the moon on the midheaven, which we can do. We can get the moon at... So we can get a situation where we have the moon on the midheaven with the Regulus on the midheaven at 0 degrees Virgo, and the moon applying to that degree still, and in the trine aspect with the sun still. We can do that with Western Europe and Northern Africa. The problem is that with Scorpio on the ascendant, then we have Mars retrograde as ruler of the first house, and I do not mess with retrograde rulers of the first house. That's just a personal rule of mine. I've never seen it work out well for the individual. I've never seen it work out well for the talisman involved, so I never recommend them. If you want to just have a go at it and say, like, oh, Regulus talisman, when will I have another option? Probably later. And you want to give it a shot with the Mars retrograde, you can do it. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's going to work out. But the power is yours, Captain Planet. The Australian version of the chart is a little bit of a sadder story, if I remember correctly, in that they aren't able to get it to work right. So, like, if I put the moon on the ascendant and I get for 0 degrees Virgo on the ascendant degree, then it's 10 degrees away. That's not going to cut it. So then we move forward, and kind of the same story here. The moon's only moved about 3 degrees now. So now it's like a 7-degree difference, and we're not going to get that. And of course, by the time the moon makes all the way back around to the ascendant degree again, she's already gone past where Regulus is at 0 degrees Virgo. As you can see, she's at 3 degrees Virgo, and also past the trine to the sun. So that's why it doesn't work out for Australia. You can give it a shot if you really, really want to for Western Europe and North Africa. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's going to work out, but I've been wrong about things before. But I don't like it. So those are your ideas. Your better option would be to make yourself an American friend, and beg them, maybe for their old Regulus talisman that they made a month ago. Maybe beg them for that one. Send them healthcare in trade. Send them health insurance. Send them healthcare as a trade for their talismans, and watch them line up to give them to you. So our last electional opportunity during our Sagittarius New Moon month is going to be for the 16th Lunar Mansion. And the 16th Mansion is another one that I like. That's kind of similar to the 23rd, I guess, where it's got kind of like slightly different powers utilizations depending on if the moon is waxing or waning in it. And the 16th Lunar Mansion is more about money. It's more about finances, the ebb and flow, as we say, of finances, to where when the 16th Lunar Mansion is waxing, we can use it to help increase money flowing towards us. And when the moon is decreasing, is waning here, we can use it to decrease debts that we owe, to decrease what we owe, to decrease the amount flowing out of us. So when we utilize the 16th Lunar Mansion in a waxing moon period, we're very much more focused on the increasing of what we can get. And we'll utilize that more for like increases in in ways that are kind of similar to the 24th, I guess. Increasing revenue streams, maybe like finding new ones, getting a raise, negotiating a raise, or trying to find another job that pays better. Those kinds of things. That's what we would go to the 16th Lunar Mansion for while it's waxing. And so the 16th Lunar Mansion in a waning phase like we have here is more focused on how we can reduce what we owe, reducing debts, that kind of thing. So I like to recommend the 16th Lunar Mansion for people who are thinking about like refinancing a loan, or maybe taking out a new loan to get better terms or conditions for it, like more favorable ones for themselves, things like that. We live in a society in which very few of us can have those milestones or markers of success, whatever that looks like to conventional society, without taking on some sort of debt burden. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it is right now. And so the least you could do is, if you have to take part in this system, is manipulate the system in some way, haha, magic, to make it less of a burden for yourself personally. So for that, I recommend the 16th Lunar Mansion. If you're at all thinking about, or maybe moving into thinking about these sorts of applications, these utilizations. So for our Western, no. This is going to be available for North America, Western Europe, North Africa. There's not an Australian version of this because of the specific aspect that we're after. But for North America, this chart is going to take place on December 24th, Christmas Eve, at 1:57 in the morning. And we're going to have the moon on the ascendant here in the 16th mansion. And the big aspect that we're looking for here is the trine, to Venus. You can see here in this chart, it's about 1 degree and some odd minutes away from perfection. So by the time we make it to Australia, there's no way we'd get it. Technically, the moon is also venerated here in between the trines of Jupiter and Venus, which is very cool, even if Jupiter does happen to be retrograde at this moment. That's not super relevant necessarily, but it's a nice little bonus for the moon to have. It was very empowering for her, which of course translates very well into the effectiveness, in my opinion, of our Lunar Mansion talisman. And the degree of the ascendant is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. The moon is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. She's doing very well to kind of stay away from it. And it's just kind of a very standard talisman. We have what we need. We don't have anything in the way. The 16th Lunar Mansion is a bit less fun, I'll say, especially the waning version is a lot less fun to use. So this would have been a much nicer configuration to have during a waxing moon phase. That'd been great. But there is still value here for those who are in a situation where this specific tool is needed. So there's that for you all. And then the Western European and North African version is, of course, very similar. Theirs takes place on December 24th at 2 in the morning, so just a little bit later, with that 14 degrees of Libra rising and the moon applying that trine to Venus. We still have that trine to Jupiter here. And the moon is exactly just past it. And the ascendant degree is in trine to that Jupiter, that retrograde Jupiter as well, which I think helps kind of strengthen things up a little bit, even though Jupiter isn't doing too fantastically well retrograde in Gemini. It's something. It's an additional hand on the bow to tie, we'll say. But again, a really great tool, the 16th Lunar Mansion, for those who are in that particular financial need, we'll say, in that specific kind of financial area of life, to be able to get something a little bit more favorable, hopefully for them as they move into whatever it is that they're trying to secure that financing for. But all right, everybody, thank you all so much for watching. That's what we have for coming up for this month, where we've got some lunar mansions, we've got a fixed star, but we're still not seeing a lot of movement on planetary talismans. And it might be a minute before we do. We'll look a little bit kind of further into the future as we start the new year to see what, if any, planetary, what if any grade A kind of gold star planetary elections that we might have be coming up in that year. So stay tuned for that. Kind of another final thing is, after a 2-year hiatus from social media, I lost my mind and decided to join Blue Sky. So make sure to follow me there while I figure out what the hell I'm even doing there and what to even talk about. So looking forward to connecting with you all there if that's an area that you're already in or you're interested in kind of migrating over to. We'll see you then. And of course, I'll always see you here for our new moon electional videos. Make sure to check out the Patreon if you're interested in some of those more full moon videos that YouTube makes it more difficult to share. And, subscribe there if you want to support the channel and these cats and their really weird eating habits. But everybody take care. Have a happy holidays for those who celebrate. And I will see you here again on our Capricorn New Moon on December 30th.